Most lifters massively overestimate what they can do in 6 weeks and massively underestimate what they can do in a year. In this video, we'll see how you can plan for a whole season in advance to use it for yourself or for your athletes. We're going to be building 5 distinct phases that's needed for a whole year's prep and build a week's worth of program for each week. First question to ask yourself is, did this person make any measurable changes in the last month, and how was that training cycle planned? I've done this in the past with myself and with my athletes in the beginning, where I had a rough idea of where we were in the training cycle, in the season, and I wrote a 4-week plan with no great periodization in mind. So it works, you can PR, but being able to see the bigger picture and really allowing the athlete to take time to adapt the physiology in a certain domain yields bigger results. And we've all probably felt it. When you start a new program, week 1 you're locked in, you start with the volume phase, weight gets heavier, and then comes the max out session 6 weeks later into the program, and still no PRs. And that's not a critique of any training plan, but sometimes you have a hard time realizing and understanding the patient that's really needed to get meaningful changes. And especially when you've been a more experienced lifter and have been lifting for multiple years. Let's show you Emma. That's Emma. She currently snatches 75 kilo and wants to get to 85, and currently does 95 kilo in the clean and jerk, and she wants to get to 105 for next year's Swiss championship. And that's a 10 kilo PR in each lift in a year. And I'm going to plan the entire year right here on this board so you can exactly see how to program with a 12 months framework instead of 6 weeks. So let's start building it. First, we have to understand the principle of periodization. So it's important, especially for sports where you have to develop multiple physical qualities like muscle hypertrophy, power output, strength gains, technical ability. And this is even truer for people who train CrossFit, for example. So to be able to make meaningful changes in a season and not a month. Here we have to really allow ourselves the time to develop physical qualities in various buckets, basically before being able to see any meaningful changes. We're not aiming to make 1 kilo or 2 kilo PRs, we're looking to make bigger 5 to 10 kilo PRs in the final part of the season. And this is the single most important idea in the whole video, so write it down. You have to be willing to get weaker on purpose in order to make meaningful progress in the long run. Why do we say that? Because here's the mechanism. Adaptation has a cost. You can't build work capacity, fix a positional weakness, and peak your max all at the same time. They compete for your available energy currently and demand a different physiological adaptation. So a smart program won't chase all of them at once. It picks one thing we want to develop momentarily and accepts a temporary dip and everything else, and stack those developments over time so that by the end of the year, every quality is developed and you're peaked on the platform on the day that counts. And that's the whole game we're trying to do here. So let me show you what it looks like. So we're going to be looking at a whole season of prep, and let's say it's maybe 50 weeks. So here we have the start where Emma's snatching 75 kilo and 95 clean and jerk. So we're going to split this in 5 different blocks, and we're going to assume 3 days a week training, and it can really vary based on the profile of the athlete, whether they're more on the strength side or more on the technical side and they lack a little bit of strength, for example. It can vary. Here we have the profile of Emma, which maybe lacks a little bit of strength, lacks a little bit of conditioning, but has a really good technical ability. So the first thing I like to do is write down the current situation and write how we get to that place for each phase. So our goal is to get her from the 75 kilo snatch to 85, and get her from the 95 kilo clean and jerk to 105. And then we look, what do we need to hit in each block in order to be strong enough for the upcoming block? Or whether it's to be powerful enough, to be technically proficient enough to make these changes, and we'll drop these goals inside of the appropriate blocks, because the athlete would have a hard time staying motivated on just 2 numbers. So we have to keep them engaged during these whole blocks. So we're going to put mini milestones and goals in each block, so like that it keeps them more motivated. Because this is a crucial part you can only build that if the athlete understands this is a year-long process and we won't deviate from the plan 2 weeks in and try and max out. The first block we're going to be looking at, here one, is going to be GPP. What we want to build is here endurance and work capacity. This is where the season starts, and it's the one everybody wants to skip. So it's work capacity, conditioning, some cardio, some higher reps, so we can start to build the engine that's going to tolerate the hard training coming later. So we're basically sacrificing here all our important physical qualities for weightlifting, so maximal strength, power output, and even technical proficiency, so that we can train harder and longer on the upcoming blocks. Block number 2 is going to be strength and hypertrophy. In this block specifically, we want to build more muscle mass and transform that muscle mass into strength gains. Anything from squats, pulls, pressing strength, and more muscle in the right places. The sacrifice here we're willing to take is technical proficiency and speed. So we're going to have a harder time to lift heavy weights because we're going to be grinding weights more. The bar is going to move slower, so the classical lifts feels a bit slower. It's not going to be as sharp as usual, and that's not a problem. That's probably the block where you're going to be doubting or regretting most the program, kind of, because you PR your squats and your pulls, but all of the classical lifts feel kind of worse. So you're going to see a drop in weightlifting numbers and you're going to feel a bit worse. It's what we have to accept in order to later make significant gains. Block number 3 is going to be technical and positional strength. Now from block 2, we take the new strength and muscles gains and we're trying to build the positional strength in the correct weightlifting position. So think about where your body is going to be when the bar passes the knee and stuff like that. So we're going to be doing a lot of pauses, complexes, fixing the pulling technique and overhead position and trying to get stronger in it. As of this block, we're really starting to get our weightlifting mojo back. So we'll continue to pursue strength that we've gained from 2 and maybe build on top of it as well. We ramp up the weightlifting volume here, but we're going to keep the load pretty light so like that technique stays smooth and we get the groove back. Block number 4 is going to be power output. So that's going to be the greatest block. Usually it's the most fun because we're going to be doing lots of power snatches, power cleans, hangs from blocks, and the strength we gain from the previous blocks here is really going to shine. The positions are there, we just need to turn them into speed now, and so we'll start reducing the volume and the load from the strength exercises, especially really heavy grindy pulls or squats. So we're going to have more or less a certain threshold we want to hit in terms of speed, so we're not grinding any squats, not grinding any pulls, and here the weights for weightlifting are going to ramp up. And here, as the weights ramp up, we have to be careful to not get carried away and kind of deviate from the technique we gained from block 3 too much. We have to keep doing accessories to minimize the pain and injury risks. It's usually around here, around this block, that we might start to see some issues flare up. And then finally, we have block number 5, which is going to be our specific / peaking block. Here is where it all comes together. So it's the final weeks before the big competition. So for us, it's going to be for the national championship. We'll basically fan out all of the variations that are a bit too far from the main competition lifts. And it's going to look mostly like full snatches, clean and jerks. We'll do some power variations, so power snatches, power cleans. We'll do lots of pulls, back squats and front squats. And this is where we'll make the most meaningful changes in terms of hitting PRs. So the new PRs are pretty often on volume PRs or power snatches, some variation, but everything before this existed to make this block possible. 4/5, let's say, of the year is to make the last block as meaningful as possible so like that we can hit those 5 to 10 kilo PRs easily. When we see the board like this, we can see the effort. We have 5 blocks, each one sacrificing something on purpose and each one feeding the next one. Not one of them on its own is the program. The whole block, the whole year is the program. And now I'm going to be building a week's worth of an example of each of these blocks, what they could be looking like. So we'll start off with the GPP. In the GPP phase, we mostly want to work on endurance and work capacity aspect. So we're going to go for no foot snatches. So here on Monday, we have a little bit of snatching, but we're doing 5 reps, so it's a lot of volume. On back squats, we're doing 12 reps. Again, a lot of volume, working on work capacity basically, and muscular endurance. And then we'll do a circuit to do a little bit of the engine work, a little bit of accessory as well, in the same time kind of. Then on Wednesday, we can do something like a 10-minute EMOM, 2 power cleans, let's say at 60%. And then we'll do some deficit snatch deadlift. And here we do leg accessories, anything that can be leg extension, leg curls, goblet squats. Try and always have the same amount of volume for the posterior chain and the anterior chain. So have the same volume for hamstrings, glutes, and quads. Bike intervals, 10 rounds. With this, again, we're going to really work on the cardio. And on Friday, what we're going to do behind the neck, push press plus power jerk. And here we'll do some heavy barbell rows. Accessories, it's going to be pull-ups, overhead press, and whatever. And then we're going to do some light running. It doesn't have to be running, it can be anything that's going to be a steady state cardio. Maybe 30 minutes would be something that's really interesting. Next, we're going to be looking at how does that differ on a strength and hypertrophy block. So we're going to write this. On this block, we're going to do snatch 3 times 3 at 70%, so we're still keeping it very light. We'll go back squats 5 by 5. And here we leg accessories. On Wednesday, we'll do a jerk. Let's say 3 times 3. Again, we'll be around the same range as 75% for some strength. So we'll go overhead press, 3 times 6. And upper body accessory. And then on Friday, we do some cleans. Never touch 80% in the weightlifting movements. And then we'll go clean deadlift. And then we'll do, for example, 1 leg accessory with back and abs and 1 upper body. So this can be, for example, goblet squat. Here we're going to have a back extension. We're going to do hanging leg raises, and here overhead presses. Phase number 3 is going to be technical proficiency and positioning block. So on that week, we're going to do something like a snatch, pause at knee 3 times 2. And we're also going to do a snatch, pull, pause at knee 4 times 3 at 95%. And here we're still going to do some back squats. Back squats, we'll say sets of 5 or sets of 3s, and plus 1 leg extension, leg curl. And then on Wednesday, we'll do something like pause and dip push press plus jerk. And then we'll go for pause jerks and upper body work. And then on Friday, we'll do a complex. For example, we can do a clean pull, low hang clean, front squat and jerk. That's going to be a long complex. So we're kind of working on the endurance and the same time in the positioning, doing the low hang clean and the front squat. And then we're going to transition into clean pulls on the lower back, abs, and let's say 1 leg and 1 upper body accessory. Then 4th block is going to be the power output, where a sample week is going to be something like that, where we start off with some power snatches. We'll still continue doing some snatch pulls. As you can see, we're going to add in now a clean and jerk variation on the same day. So we're going to be doing light variation, so a push press, so it's not going to take up too much time nor too much energy, before doing the back squat. But we'll continue pushing the back squat. You can see 80% for 3 reps on paper. It's pretty lightish on the intensity side. But we want to move 80% with a good intention of moving it fast. On Wednesday, we'll start off with a light snatch complex. So we're going to go muscle snatch plus snatch balance. After doing the light snatch complex, we're going to be doing a front squat plus jerk, so like that can work on the leg strength, and being a little bit more specific with simulating a hard clean and jerking out of a hard front squat basically, and then keeping only the front squat, again triples at 80%, so like that we can move a heavy load, but for 3 reps should be easy but fast. And then on Friday, we'll do something like a clean and jerk from blocks, even do clean pulls from blocks. Again, coming back to moving heavy weights fast, and we have that shortened range of motion, so we can go really heavy and really focus on the extension. And then we'll still end up with doing some hip snatches, 4 times 3 at 75%, because we want to keep here the weightlifting volume ramping up, even though intensity still stays pretty low. So I don't have a lot of room to write this in. Phase 5, peaking. Everything culminates for this block. So here we're going to be very sport specific. So we're going to do snatch 7 sets of 1, 5%. To pulls, 2 times 2 at 110%. And then we're going to do power clean and jerk 3 times 1 at 80%. And end up with some back squats 4 times 2 at 85%. And then on Wednesday, it's going to be our power day, more or less. So we're going to be doing power snatches 4 times 2 at 75%. Still continue doing some pulls and then some lighter clean and jerk complex to get the speed going. And finally, we're going to have our big Friday, let's call it, for a little bit of fun. And also because this is going to be looking the most like the competition day. So heavy snatches and heavy clean and jerks while still maintaining some volume. So we can do like snatches at 3 times 1 at 90% plus, still keeping some pulls at 2 times 1, 105%. We're going to jump into clean and jerk singles, 4 times 1, 90%, pulls 2 times 1, 110%, front squats, 3 times 2 at 90%. Here you have basically a year's worth of programming, and you can get the basic general idea of how volume for strength and weightlifting exercises fluctuate from the beginning until the end. You can screenshot this entire screen so like that you can see exactly how weightlifting volume and intensity varies in between these blocks. Same thing for strength and same thing for accessories. Here the only thing that I left out are the block 4 and 5 accessories. You basically want to keep a certain level of accessories going. 4 meaningful sets is the minimum, because I know weightlifters, I've coached tons of weightlifters, I've been training myself for a long time. If we ask too much, we'll have nothing. Also, don't forget your abs and don't forget your lower back. Lower back is super useful to do lots of accessories. You should almost be doing it every day, but every other training session is fine also. For athletes, it might be hard to see this whole year plan and to stay motivated. So we add in cycle goals for them to reach and aim towards to. So for Emma, we could have these various mini goals to work towards, and I'll write them down. In the GPP phase, as she wants to be running a little bit more, we can say that a goal could be to run a 10K in less than 55 minutes. Strength and hypertrophy phase will be to squat 135 kilos. The technical and positional phase, you can say something like a pause jerk at 100 kilos or a snatch balance at 90 kilos. There can be really multiple mini goals for each phase, and we're going to talk about it later on. The power output phase is going to be power clean 90. And on the specific / peaking block, we're going to say we want to triple 70 kilos in a snatch, and we want to double 90 in a clean and jerk. And these are all kind of arbitrary. We place them with these values here, but they could be off by a few kilos. They're only here to have a goal in mind when we explain the workout plan to the athlete. And for all of these big block numbers, as this example, we can even break them down further to make even more mini milestones, so we can make the process more enjoyable and help out with athlete motivation. Let's take this example of the 135 kilo squats. We can see it as she has to first squat 95 for 8 reps, and then she has to squat 100 kilos for 5 reps, and then she has to do 100 kilos for a 5x5, and then she's going to have to triple 115, and let's say double 125. And once she does that, we know she's ready to hit that 135 for 1 rep. And we frame this example when we explain the plan, that we are placing checkpoints alongside their yearly programming, so she can focus on the goal, the big goal, but also focus on the little goals along the way without having her worry about her weightlifting. Because by the end of the strength block, I don't care about her snatch mats. I care that her squat and her pulls have climbed, because that's the ceiling that everything else lifts under. By the end of the technical block, I want her position clean, enough that she's not missing the weights that she's already made or that she's not supposed to be missing. And most lifters, they leave kilos on the table, not because they lack strength, but by having missed so many lifts in a training cycle, they get used to missing, and then they'll miss easy percentages. And by the power block, I want the speed back, I want the full lifts moving fast at her old maxes and slightly above. And then in the peak, we're transforming all of the strength and power we had from the before blocks we created into the full lifts. And here we have to have practice at heavier intensities. And that's what all of the work here accumulates towards, is into this last block. Thank you for watching this video. I hope you were able to take something away from it. Leave a like and subscribe if you liked it. It helps us a ton. And if you're a coach looking for a coaching tool made for weightlifting and destined for this long-term planning style, and a tool to help you running your whole coaching business in one area, check out Strength Academy app. The link is in the description, and don't hesitate to hit us up on any social media channels if you have any questions regarding the video or for the coaching software. And if you have any specific topics you'd like me to address, leave a comment. See you next time.